Hi guys, welcome back to another book review. So as most of you may know, I did receive this book from the Nerd Fam and a PR package from them. And so I did get read. As most of you know, you send me a PR package, I am going to read your book. I do not just stick books on my shelves. Give it to me, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna cherish it. It is what it is. So I received this book from the Nerd Fam and I cherished it and I read it. So I'm gonna let you know what I think about it. So this one, I have a lot to say about this one. This one is labeled as a fantasy romance and there is fantasy in it. So I don't, or romance in it. So I don't want to say that this one is not romance, but I have a lot of thoughts on this one. This one to me felt very high fantasy, like very, very high fantasy. There is romance in it, but I felt like the romance until more of the end of the book really takes a backseat. And I say that because as you see, I have a lot of romance or fantasy in the background. And like, see this series and this series, like the romance doesn't necessarily happen until like later on, but I feel like it builds up to the romance in a lot of the ways. But I don't know how to put it. Like anybody who reads high fantasy, I think is gonna understand when I say this one just feels very high fantasy. There is a difference between romantasy and high fantasy. Just the way they're built, just the way they start, the way they're built, everything. And this one has a very more of a high fantasy feel to me than romantasy. Now that's not a bad thing, but I understand why she did label it as romantasy, because if she probably labeled as high fantasy, people might complain and be like, this is too much romance for a high fantasy book. But to me, I've read books that have been just labeled as fantasy, and they do have about the same amount of romance in them. You know, it's up to you, but it is labeled as a romantasy. To me, I think it's more high fantasy to me, just the way it progresses, the way it's laid out. That's not a bad thing. I just feel like I want to just portray that when I'm giving a review, because I don't want somebody who is a diehard romantasy fan going in and saying, oh my God, you know, they're going to pick this up, and then they're like, wait, this is not what I expected, and them not DNF or give the book, say, a really bad review because they're going in expecting something like, say, these type of romantasies, because it is not going to be those type of romantasies. It is going to be more, it's just more leaning towards a high fantasy. And so if you are somebody who kind of dabbles in the romantasy and the high fantasy, then definitely would be a great choice for you. But if you are somebody who is strictly just romantasy, go into this very carefully and very open-minded, because like I said, I don't want the author to get a bad review just because of that. So like I said, you just got to be careful going into this one. It is a great book and it was built very well. I really liked the way the story unfolded. So again, like I said, I just want to be real careful going into that one. Going from there, like I said, it is a very unique world. I really like the way the world, it is very, very complex. And that's why, like I said, when you go into those high fantasy worlds, they are complex worlds. They are really complex. The stories tend to build and they tend to be building complex. So this one, I'm going to give you a quick overview. There is a woman who has built her entire life kind of being trained and built up a certain way. And when it gets her chance to shine, she does not get to go into the world the way she expected to go into the world. Instead, they kind of send her in a direction she doesn't want to be in. And because of that, she completely goes off on her own, ends up meeting someone who completely helps her change her entire life path. And she actually becomes really amazing at that life path and really excels at that life path and ends up, you know, doing some really great stuff. Like I said, I don't want to give a lot away because you really can with this one. But again, very complex, very high fantasy, very crazy complex worlds. I really like the way the story unfolded. Very great, very strong female main character to me. I felt like she really great. So if you are somebody, like I said, who kind of dabbles in both of those worlds, then definitely check this one out. Or if you are somebody who in the past has dabbled in both those worlds, or if you're just interested in that and you can do a fantasy that's lighter on the romance, then go ahead and check this one out, because I really enjoyed this one and I think you might too.